Let me clear the air on something before we get started here. A great guitar solo, a professional sounding guitar solo, does not necessarily mean you're just throwing up a bunch of notes on people. In other words, just because you're playing endless arpeggios up and down the neck, that doesn't automatically equate to a great guitar solo. There are two things that are going to make your guitar solo great. Number one, it must fit into the context of the rhythm that's being played. I don't care how fast you can play, if it doesn't fit the rhythm, it's going to be garbage. Number two, your guitar solo has to trigger some sort of emotional response. It has to captivate the listener. Of course, it needs to captivate you as well because you're the one playing it. And in this video, I'm going to give you some simple practical techniques that you can use to make your guitar solo sound amazing and captivating. All right, so the three techniques we're going to start out with, these are pretty simple concepts for the most part, but they're powerful, and I'll explain why in a second. So the three things are bends, vibrato, and slides. I know it doesn't sound that exciting, like, Jason, I know how to bend a string and do the vibrato and slide and all that stuff. But let me just give you an example real quick. So we could play just a short series of notes here. Let's take those notes, let's add what I just talked about, and I'll break these down one by one, by the way, but let's add some of these techniques into this, okay? What I did is I just added some flavor. I added some character to that by using these techniques. So when we talk about string bending, we're just bending, again, just bending a note up. So like this. Most of the time we're bending up a whole step or a half step. So if you're playing this note here and you're wanting to play this note next, instead of doing this, you can bend up to that note. Same with a half step, right? If you just want to go half step up, so that's the concept of string bending, and again, it just allows you to add some more character to those notes instead of just playing the note, right? So we talked about that, and you heard me do a little vibrato there at the end as well. Vibrato is essentially just bending the string as well. You're just not like bending it all the way. You're just giving, the best way to describe it is putting hot sauce on the chicken wings. We'll just say that, right? Or putting the Thai chili peppers in the curry, just spicing it up. You're not just playing the notes on the fretboard. You're pouring your heart and soul into these, and that's why we're using these techniques, right? So the vibrato, again, it's kind of the same thing as a string bend. You're essentially bending that string, but just giving it a little back and forth. And I'll tell you this right now, every guitar player does this a little differently, so don't let anyone tell you you're doing this the wrong way if it sounds good to you, because the best way is your way. And I want you to always remember that. This is all about developing your own style of playing. The last thing you want to do is go after somebody else's style or have someone tell you, well, you've got to play like the pros do, that guitar player over there, because all the pros do this differently. And every professional guitar player, they're professional because they have their own distinct style of playing, and they do things just a little bit differently. So that's you. You have your own distinct style, so I want you to know that. Now let's throw in the slide. So those notes I played just now, those are pretty close together for the most part. And one cool way to do this, you can like play a note, then play a lower note and slide back to that note. So these three techniques, the string bends, the vibrato, the slides, this helps your leads go from sounding still and robotic and just you playing the notes to pouring your heart and soul into each and every note. And whoever's listening to you play guitar, they're going to feel every one of those notes. And that's what a guitar solo is all about. Before we go to some more technical techniques here, because I do want to get into some stuff, some shreddy stuff here. If you're just starting out playing lead guitar, look at chapter 3 and go through the video series, the video on chapter 3 of my free Metal Riffs and Licks. I'll leave a link to that in the description, but that's going to show you everything you need to know about lead guitar techniques and applying those into real solos, and just go through that. That's going to help you tremendously. So let's move on to the next technique I want to share with you, or next bucket of techniques. So this is a technique that I call rhythmic picking. You heard this in the very beginning in the intro. I did something like this here. I call this rhythmic picking. There's probably another name for it, but what you're doing is almost having your lead, your solo sound sort of like a rhythm. It's rhythmic. It's got this feel to it. And this breaks you away from having to play single notes all the time. Because sometimes when you're playing solos, it's like, okay, well, the majority of it is going to be single notes, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that, again, that's the majority of the guitar solos, but throwing in something like this when you're going back and forth between two notes and two strings like we're doing here, that just adds a whole nother dimension to your solos, and it can make things sound really, really interesting. And I'll show you what I'm doing here. So we're playing on the G and B strings here. I'm just going back and forth between the 5th fret of both strings starting out, and I'm going to have a constant note. That's going to be the G string, 5th fret, and then the other notes I'm playing on the B string are going to be 5, 6, and 8. And you can hear I'm palm muting the note on the G string, that 5th fret, and I'm just going back and forth between those two strings. And of course I slid up, remember we implemented some slides in there, to the 12th fret, and I just did really that same pattern on the 12th fret of both of those strings. And you don't have to play it exactly like that. That's really not the technique itself, what I played, but the concept of what I played, going back and forth between two strings, making it sound kind of like a rhythm meets lead at the same time. You can play around with the cadence, you can play around with how you pick that. Okay, again, you can just play with that technique for days. I call this rhythmic picking. We'll just say Jason Stallworth coined that phrase. I'm not sure. That's just what I call it. I think it sounds cool. Now, let's get into a little more of the shreddy techniques here, okay? Because I know everyone wants to play fast, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You hear me play fast a lot. I love it. I love shred guitar. I love fast solos. But remember, go back to the beginning when we talked about not having everything sound so robotic and so stale. Fast solos can start to sound like that if you're not implementing some of these other techniques that we've learned up to this point. So always go back to that foundation that you're building. Build that solid foundation first, and then we can build a really awesome structure on top of that. That's what you're doing really in this video. That's what we're doing right now. So one is legato picking, and we can kind of couple these in with hammer-ons and pull-offs too. It's kind of essentially the same thing. Okay, I just repeated that down here, but let me show you what I'm doing. You'll notice that I only pick the note from the start, and then I pick the final one. So that's legato picking. You're just not picking. And actually, it's a lot less effort to play that way, and you can play a lot faster without having to worry about picking every single note. And it gives it a really cool, more importantly, it gives it just a different tone, a different sound. So if I were to pick these notes, that sounds cool, but this is going to sound different. It's it's not that one is better than the other. They both sound cool, but here's the thing. You have both of these skills. We're going to talk about the alternate picking in a second here. You're going to have both of these skills to whip out at any given time. So if you want to do this, you can do it. If you want to do that, you can do that too. You've got both available to you because you know how to do it. And this just gives you more tools in your back pocket to add to your solos and add to you developing your own style and your own signature style of playing. Because again, that's what this is really all about. So if we go through this, again, we're on the B string. We're doing this on frets 7, 8, and 10. And you can just practice that. You can just pick that first note and hammer down. And then add the pull off like we just did too. And then you can start throwing in more notes along the way. Just practice that and you'll get used to that style really quickly, and you'll find yourself like flying up and down the fretboard with that style. It's pretty cool. But yeah, that's legato picking. Kind of the same concept again as hammer-ons and pull-offs. Now, we talked about picking all the notes, and this is where you get into the really fast alternate picking. There's two things I want you to know about this. A lot of times I'm adding a slight palm mute, so we could play it without the palm mute. I like to add the palm mute just kind of off and on. It just helps tighten things up a little bit. Another thing you'll notice, and this, when you do this, you're gonna be like, oh crap, I didn't know it was that simple, Jason. If you think in threes, if you think, okay, 3 notes at a time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So wrap your mind around that. And another thing you just heard me do was I repeated that. So that's an easy way to play faster. Now, again, you don't have to do it that way. You can make up something else, that's fine. But that's just a really simple way to kind of dive into this and just to play real fast and start shredding. Then you'll start adding more notes to that, adding more notes. Then, of course, you'll add some bends to that because you don't want to just do like an onslaught shred. Or maybe you do. Sometimes it just sounds cool, right? But you can do something like this. One other technique I want to cover real quick, and of course there are more techniques, but I want to touch on sweep picking real quick because that's a completely different style, and it's kind of one of those things where some people will pick up on that really quickly while others just seem to struggle with it. But I'll show you a unique way that I approach this. So a lot of times your basic, your 3-string sweep is. A lot of times I'll I'll throw a little finger tap in there, which is pretty common, right? To add to that, sometimes I'll do a little slide with that same finger that I'm tapping with. Okay, here I'm starting on the 12th fret. We're playing this just on the G, B, and E strings. It's 12, 13, 12, right? Then hammer down on that 15th fret, and then I use my middle finger in this case to tap because I'm holding my pick here. So again, it's just things for you to think about to just add a little bit more dynamics to your guitar solos. Now, of course, there are other techniques. You can add string skipping. There's all kind of things you can do. And I've covered those in other videos. But the other thing that I talked about early on was playing your leads in context. And I'm not going to go too deep into this, but this means you want to play in key for one. And it's not to say you have to play every note perfectly in key, because sometimes those notes that step outside of that can sound wicked and cool. But you want to know the rhythm well enough, and you want to know where you can go, those safe zones you can go on the fretboard well enough to know that, okay, well, they're playing in the key of E minor, for example, so I know the notes that I can play that's going to fit perfectly. So that gives you the freedom to be creative. And if you want to step outside of that, then that's perfectly fine too. And a real easy way to do this, I'll show you this real quick. So let's just take an E minor scale. And no, we're not playing scales for the sake of playing scales here, but we're going to play an E minor scale, this here. Real quick, the cool thing about these scales, about the E minor scale and E major for that, but you're starting on an E note, you're ending on an E note. Okay, the other thing about a minor scale, and this is for all minor scales, once you know one, you know them all, right? And I know I've talked about this before, we'll go over this quickly though. So the difference between the frets you're going to play within an E minor scale, and I'll show you why this is important, is you're going to go a half step, skip a fret, or aka go half step in between the second and third notes here, and the fifth and sixth notes, okay? The reason why that's important is because you can replicate that now anywhere on the fretboard. This is an insane way of learning all the notes that you need to play in a certain key, because, well, here's why. So we start on the E, we end on the E. We know that, right? Okay, well, Jason, that's the E minor scale. I get it, but where else can I play that? Well, what did you end on? E. Well, what do we start the E minor scale with? E. So how do we know what to play after that? Because we know the structure. You don't skip a fret, just a half step between the what? Second and third notes and the fifth and sixth notes. So we can just do this. Apply the same structure. And now you can just figure that out, tie those all together, just work with that and play that anywhere on the fretboard. So you'll eventually kind of know where to go. That's your safe pockets all over the fretboard when you're playing in the key of E minor. And remember, once you know one minor scale, you know them all. Well, how do we know them all? Well, because we know that where you start, well, this next song is in C sharp minor. Well, we know if we start with a C sharp note, okay, we know it's going to end on the same note, octave higher. And we know what? The structure. And then you can start getting creative because you're going to be able to tie these all together. So that's how you learn to play in key within that same key, and that's how you can make your solo fit the rhythm. We talked about that in the beginning. That's the important thing, because if all you know is just, a few shred patterns that you've memorized, well, if you can't do that in the key of the song, it doesn't really help you much, okay? I guess you could learn the pattern in that key, that's fine, but I think it's better just to build those, again, I call these safe zones, build those up throughout the fretboard, which means practice soloing in different keys, which is exactly what I have you doing in my Guitar Academy and in my free Metal Riffs and Licks. Again, I mentioned my free Metal Riffs and Licks practice guide. Grab that. Chapter 3 covers that. You'll actually play some solos in different keys, and we'll go over the techniques and all that. So there's a link in the description. Now, of course, if you already have that, consider joining the Jason Stallworth Guitar Academy. I'd love to see you in there. I've actually got a course called Lead Guitar Apprentice. That's the level 1 lead guitar course, and that really goes deep into the basics and of course has you applying those basics as well. I even touch lightly on some theory and how to make theory serve you, not you serve it. So that's the thing we talk about in that course as well. And I've got a level 2 course after that that gets into melodic soloing with some faster licks and that sort of thing. So check that out if you haven't already. There are links in the description of this video. But I truly hope this video helps you. Please leave me any questions that you might have. Let me know which parts of this video helped you the most. That would help me in making content for you. I enjoy making these videos because you and I were sitting in the studio, this small 10 by 11 room that I'm in. You and I, we're sitting in here together and we're just jamming. We're coming up with ideas, because my job here on YouTube is really just to push you to that next level. You've got that next level. It's already there, is within your reach. And sometimes you just need a tip or two along the way. It's like, oh, okay, that's it. And now you're here. And then we just keep growing together. So again, I hope this video served you well. I hope that it helped you. As always, keep it metal and keep playing music.